Somebody like Camila Cardoso with her size, that's certainly going to help you out in that rebounding department. Assuming she's going to be able to get on the court right away. That is kind of the odd thing about the WNBA with so few teams in the league in general, and so many great players coming in from college basketball and internationally as well. You have some international picks mixed in there as well. They're not always guaranteed to get on the court. And you have a lot of good talent that does sit on the bench at the WNBA level just because there's not as many places for them to go. And there's certainly been, calls for expansion of the league and everything like that. And with the rise in popularity of women's basketball, maybe that's something that could be on the horizon, but would certainly help with, spreading the talent out a little bit more. This WNBA draft probably created more intrigue than most do. Obviously here, with how big women's basketball is in South Carolina, we pay attention closely each and every year. And again, you had a ton of girls, go a season ago, and obviously we knew Cardoso was going to be a top pick this year. But from a national standpoint, not a whole lot of people pay attention to the WNBA draft as much as they would have last night, because of course this was a historic season for women's basketball at the college level. Tons of great players that were going to end up being drafted last night, and that was, of course, headlined by the number 1 pick. Cut number 10 here, Dave.
With the first pick in the 2024 WNBA draft, the Indiana Fever select Caitlin Clark, University of Iowa.
To the surprise of absolutely no one, Caitlin Clark going number 1 overall to the Indiana Fever in the WNBA draft last night. She's actually going to be teaming up with a couple of former Gamecocks. Of course, Leah Boston and Victoria Saxton already up there in Indiana, and that team is going to get a lot of eyes on it this season, to say the least. And of course, Caitlin Clark is going to go down as one of the greatest women's basketball players in college history. Now she gets the opportunity to, start writing this new chapter of her career at the professional level. Now I'm very interested to see the effect she can have on the professional game from an interest standpoint. Because again, and this entire season was a big step forward in women's basketball. These past couple of years have been a big step forward in women's basketball from the college level, with ratings going up, overall interest, and all that kind of stuff. A big catalyst of that was Caitlin Clark. She's not the sole reason. Again, you can look at the games that she was not playing in. Those ratings are still significantly better than they have been in years past. But when Caitlin Clark was on the court, in the Elite Eight, in the Final Four, in the national championship, all those ratings just continue to break record after record after record, much like she did on the court this season. What kind of effect is that going to have on the professional game? Because women's college basketball is a lot more at the forefront of attention and, interest than I would say the WNBA is. And that's not taking away from the WNBA game. It's great basketball, with a ton of great players and great talent across their league. But it does not get nearly the publicity that women's college basketball gets. Now, women's college basketball obviously still plays second fiddle to men's college basketball at the end of the day. But again, you're seeing those numbers go up and you're seeing that general interest rise. A lot of that has to do with Caitlin Clark. Now that she's going to be a pro, what kind of effect can she have at the next level? Now, I give credit to the WNBA because they are going to milk this for all that it's worth. Even before she got drafted by the Fever last night, they said a week or so ago that 36 of the 40 regular season games for the Indiana Fever are going to be on national television. Starting off with game number 1 less than a month from now on May the 14th against Connecticut on ESPN2. Like, they're going to do everything they can to position Caitlin Clark in front of as many eyes as possible to try and bring in more and more interest to their league and to their game. And credit to them for doing that, because that's exactly what they need to do. First of all, what kind of effect can she have, and how long can that last? Because, and I mentioned, a month from now, the story's still fresh. People still talking about her. I think that game on ESPN2 against Connecticut is going to shatter all kinds of records. There's going to be a ton of interest. You're talking about the middle of May where, you have the NBA playoffs, and you still have baseball going on, obviously, but not a ton. The draft will have already passed and everything like that. So you have the opportunity to get a little bit more of a casual audience tuning in for that game. And I imagine the first couple of weeks will probably be fantastic ratings for the Fever in the WNBA because of Caitlin Clark. But as the season rolls along, can that success be sustained? That's where I start to wonder. Now, the WNBA has positioned itself to try and stand alone on the basketball calendar. And I understand why. You know, you don't want to get lost in the shuffle of every other basketball league going on with the NBA, college, men's and women's basketball happening basically from October to, when you count the NBA, all the way going to the end of June. So the WNBA starts the season in May and tries to capitalize on the end of the NBA regular season and basically wraps up before college basketball gets started with the WNBA finals taking place in the middle of October. But again, as you get about halfway through the season, football starts to ramp up. Then you get into football season. Obviously, baseball is getting down to the crunch time in August and September. Then you have the MLB postseason in the month of October. It very much gets lost in the shuffle. So what kind of effect can Caitlin Clark have when there's all these other things going on and not just basketball? Can she still pull in those viewers and those eyes to the WNBA product? I don't know. I would certainly hope that she can, but I'm not going to sit here and bet on and say definitively that, the WNBA is going to suddenly start pulling in 8, 9, 10 million viewers for games that they were otherwise getting less than 1 million for in years past. I think the overall interest is going to be up. Caitlin Clark's not going to go anywhere in terms of her relevance from like a marketing standpoint. She's still going to be in, State Farm commercials and Gatorade commercials and all that kind of stuff. She was on Saturday Night Live the other day, which I thought she did a really good job in the parts that she was featured in. So she's just still going to be a forefront in terms of her marketability, but the actual games itself, her actually playing basketball, that is what I'm interested in seeing. Because again, huge effect on the women's game in college basketball. There's a reason Dawn Staley took the time to thank her for her contributions after winning the national championship in the trophy ceremony, basically, because she had that big of an effect on the women's college game. Can that translate over to the WNBA? We're going to have to wait and see. Like I said, it's going to start off wonderful. Again, I think that game a month from now is going to set all kinds of ratings records for the WNBA, but can it be sustained success is going to be the interesting thing to see, and how long that lasts. Now, kind of going back to the argument that I make about spring football, where I think they'd be better served playing in actual football season in the fall. Would the WNBA be better playing during actual basketball season, somewhere between October and June? Maybe, but you're also risking getting lost in the shuffle there, too, of being the fourth most relevant basketball league in most people's eyes, because there's so many other options. So you're kind of in a tough spot there. I understand what the WNBA tries to do with with trying to stand on its own, but at the same time, there is basketball fatigue for a lot of people, where if you are a basketball nut and you start watching, college basketball in the NBA in October or November, and you carry it all the way through the NBA Finals in June, you're probably going to take a little bit of time off. So you're not going to be as interested in watching basketball in July and August and stuff like that, especially if you're into football too, as that starts to ramp up. So again, I'd be very interested to see how much sustained success the WNBA can have with Caitlin Clark in her first full season with the Indiana Fever, and what kind of dynamic she brings to that team. For the team itself, they were in the bottom half in scoring in the league. They shot the third fewest three-pointers in the WNBA a season ago. That's going to change. 100%. That is going to change. She's going to come out there and she's going to be launching logo threes and stuff like that, hitting from 30 feet out, just like she did in college. And will likely create a very entertaining product, if nothing else, for the Indiana Fever and the WNBA. But the sustained success will be an interesting thing to keep track of as she goes into her first full season in the WNBA. But congratulations to her, Cardoso, all the women drafted last night, and hopefully can all have great careers at the next level in the WNBA. We'll jump to the baseball conversation. Our guy Jack Veltri going to be checking in coming up next on on the Love Chevrolet phone lines as we set our sights ahead for the next challenge for Gamecock baseball tonight against Citadel, and this upcoming weekend taking on Arkansas, and the next weekend taking on another tough opponent in the Kentucky Wildcats. We'll dive into all that coming up. Appreciate you listening as always on the 107.5 The Game app. Download it on the iTunes App Store or the Google Play Store. Also check us out on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. Jack Belcher coming up next here on the Extra Point on The Game. Oh, as always, I love telling you about my friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. Again, if you're the average homeowner, you're probably not paying a whole lot of attention to your home's foundation, but you should always keep a keen eye on things going on around your home, especially if you start to notice some oddities, like maybe cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors or windows that might be a little bit sticky, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you're noticing any of these things, any of them at all, you could have serious foundation issues with your home. If you see any of these problems, you need to check out our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist. Go online to cantycanfixit.com. Schedule an appointment today. They will send out a professional to evaluate your home's foundation and get you and your family fixed up just right so you can live comfortably going forward. Again, Canty Foundation Specialist online at cantycanfixit.com. Well, welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Head with you on this Tuesday morning. Another Gamecock baseball game coming out tonight, taking on the Citadel at 7 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting at 6:45 right here on the game. Speaking of Gamecock baseball, time to chat with our guy Jack Veltri from Gamecock Central. Jack was down in Gainesville over the weekend watching the Gamecocks get 2 out of 3 against the Florida Gators. And with that victory and the past week that was for the Gamecocks, they've jumped back into the top 25 in D1's baseball poll. And when you look at these past 5 games, the last game against A&M, the win against North Carolina last week, and then taking 2 out of 3 against a then-ranked Florida Gators team, I think it's kind of easy to say South Carolina's playing their best baseball right now. That doesn't mean they're perfect, but this past week, been pretty good.
Yeah, first off, thank you for having me on as always. But, yeah, it was a good week. I think, I think beating Texas A&M, look, while you lost that series, it really did wonders for the momentum because you really needed to get a game. You just needed to win, and you found a way to do it in kind of dramatic fashion, holding on to win. And then you go to Charlotte and you win a close 1-run game against North Carolina, a good ranked team right there, and now the confidence is kind of flowing. And then you go to Gainesville and you play really good ball throughout the entire weekend, in my opinion. Look, I mean, you scored really high numbers all 3 games, and I think that was good enough to win at least 2 of 3. Ideally, you would like to sweep. I think South Carolina definitely had a chance to do so on Sunday. But, I mean, if there's anyone disappointed with the fact that South Carolina lost a game this week, I mean, have you not watched this team lately? I mean, it's been a big turnaround this week, and I think it could do wonders moving forward. It's only going to get tougher from here, but then again, we're kind of saying that every week. So it was a good week for South Carolina.
Speaking of building confidence, I don't think anybody's feeling more confident coming away from the weekend than Will Tippett, having his best production the entire season. Going into the series against Florida, he had 1 multi-hit game on the entire year, and he goes back-to-back with 2 hits on Friday and Saturday. And listening to, Coach Kingston talk yesterday on the postgame show with Jay and Elijah, it really boiled down to him not switch hitting this weekend. They kept him exclusively in the right-hand batter's box, kind of focusing on hitting that side of the ball. It obviously did wonders. Has that been the thing that's been holding Will Tippett back at the plate this entire season?
I don't know. Yeah, obviously he doesn't hit great from the left-handed side, but for some reason, I mean, it just worked. Now, I asked Mark when he brought that up, I think on Friday last week, like, is that going to be like a long-term thing or whatever? And he said, well, he kind of made the joke that we'll let you guys find out over time. I'm assuming that's going to be the case. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think it just makes a world of difference when he's hitting well. And look, I mean, he's had a lot of people, just doubt him this year and stuff, and push him over and stuff, and think that he's not going to do anything at the plate. But seriously, I think he might have had like one of the better weekends of anyone on the team. He just really hit the ball well. I mean, the fact that he was consistently fouling pitches off of someone like Jack Caglione and not going down without a fight, it was a small sample size of how good he really did this weekend. And honestly, with the entire lineup, I mean, you have Cole Messina leading off, and that made a world of difference, in my opinion. I think it really set the table for what you're able to do. And then the production 7 through 9 with Tippett, I think Brewer and Thomas Lee Croy, guys like that at the bottom of the order. And Dalton Reeves, we're really able to do some damage this weekend. It makes a big difference when your entire lineup is really able to go out there and score a lot of runs.
Well, that's the thing that stands out to me, that if you can get this consistent performance from Tippett going forward, compared to what he's been this entire season, you'd finally have that guaranteed production at the bottom of the lineup, which again, at that 9 spot, which Tippett typically holds down, you just haven't had this entire year, and being able to translate that over into the top of the lineup as you're going, through, inning after inning, I can't help but think that's going to do wonders for this team offensively as a whole.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the thing about Tippett is his glove had always been pretty good, and ever since he came to South Carolina as a freshman, his speed was evident, right? He's a guy that, could steal bags. He has done so this year, and he can easily turn a double into a triple if the moment's right. And the only thing he was really missing was his bat, and for most of this year, he's kind of been an automatic strikeout. But the fact that he was able to go out there this weekend and not just put together one good at bat, I'm sure people were thinking that home run he hit on Friday night was a fluke. Oh, the wind was carrying the ball, this and that. Well, I mean, he really went out there and he smacked the ball. I can't remember exactly how many hits he had, but I mean, he was putting good metal on the ball every single time, just about. And yeah, he had a few strikeouts here and there, but that's kind of who South Carolina is, right? They're going to strike out a little bit, but they're also going to score a lot of runs. And I think, like I said before, when you're getting production 1 through 9 in your lineup, you're in a really good position to go out and win a lot of ball games.
Yeah, talking to Jack Felcher from Gamecock Central, turning our attention to the game tonight, taking on the Citadel again, 7 o'clock, first pitch pregame coverage starting at 6:45. Here on the game, Coach Kingston has not yet announced a starter. Of course, Eddie Copper, the usual week, midweek starter, obviously out with an injury. Dylan Eskew got to go last week, but he pitched 3 innings on Sunday, so likely not going to be in the fold, at least from a starting standpoint tonight. Who do you think gets the ball to start things off tonight against the Citadel?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I actually was just checking my email 5 minutes before we called. I could be wrong. Things could change, but with the email inbox from South Carolina baseball, they had Tyler Pitzer listed as tonight's starter. So if I had to make a guess, I would imagine it's him. He pitched on Sunday. Obviously, he pitched in that really big spot, 9-8 game on Saturday, and South Carolina's on the ropes of blowing what was at one point just a really big lead, and Florida's coming back like they always try to do, and you're feeling like, okay, what's going to happen? And then Pitzer goes out in the 9th inning and gets 3 outs, and Florida had the winning run on base, so the fact that Pitzer was able to go out there and do that just really shows how much he's matured this season, and it's good to see that he's going to get back into a starting role. Now, how long he pitches tonight, I'm not sure. I wouldn't expect him to go the length of a normal start. Maybe you get 4 or 5 innings at him tonight if his pitch count's low enough. But I think that's more than enough, honestly, because I think what we also saw this weekend was we got to see other guys pitch, right, that normally don't get to. You saw Michael Polk and Jake McCoy go out and toss scoreless innings in a tight ball game on Sunday. And I would imagine they're going to be available tonight probably. Who's to say they won't be? I think this is a good opportunity tonight for not just Pitzer to go out there and get his confidence back as a starter, especially coming off the heels of a great performance over the weekend, but to get some other guys in there and see what they can do, because it kind of reminds me of last week with Charlotte, right? Because you had a lot of guys go out there like Connor McCurry, who hadn't pitched in weeks, and go out there and give their best performance of the year. So it'll be really interesting to see how Kingston and Matt Williams use the bullpen and pitcher tonight.
We'll see what happens tonight, and then we'll turn our attention to this weekend with a tough series taking on Arkansas and another tough one coming up next weekend at taking on Kentucky. And we'll check back in with you later on in the week. Appreciate it as always, Jack.
Thank you so much, my man. Always appreciate it. Have a good day.
Yeah, all right. Jack Felcher from Gamecock Central again tonight, 7 o'clock, taking on the Citadel. As always, head online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. $900 in the pot right now. Still waiting. There was about 6 opportunities for the Gamecocks to hit a Grand Slam over the weekend against Florida. We're not able to capitalize on that. Maybe can do that against Citadel tonight. That is a Citadel team that's reeling, by the way. They've lost 10 out of their last 11. Obviously, the Gamecocks picked up the 7-1 victory over them earlier on in the season. We'll continue our baseball conversation. Time to hand out the TEC Equipment Rentals Award of the Week. We'll hit that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head with you on this Tuesday morning. It is indeed time for our TC Equipment Rentals Who Did the Heavy Lifting. Before we get into that, though, I do want to let you know, tomorrow morning on the early game at 8 o'clock, a very, very special announcement. This is a big deal. I will just say this much. You're not going to want to miss it. Bill and Preston, tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, a very, very big and special announcement that you're going to want to tune in for right here on the game. So don't miss that. Mark that on your calendar again tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock on the early game. All right, time for the TEC Equipment Rental. Who did the heavy lifting of the week? By the way, shout out to our guys over at TEC Equipment Rental. Enjoyed being out there on Friday, 2025 Old Dunbar Road. Literally have every piece of equipment you can think of that you need for a rental. They got tractors, they got the the big lifts, all that kind of stuff. Whatever you need, TEC Equipment Rental has got you covered. And as always, appreciate the free hat that they hooked me up with. I am a sucker for a free hat, and I'm proudly wearing it if you're watching on the live stream. Sponsored by Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. The award this week goes to somebody that Jack Beltry and I were just talking about a couple minutes ago, Tyler Pitzer, who seems to potentially be the starter for tonight's game taking on the Citadel, and I think he certainly earned that right. We talk so much about the value of winning on the road in the SEC, and that doesn't happen for the Gamecocks this weekend if Tyler Pitzer does not come in clutch in that ninth inning of the Saturday game. The Gamecocks were able to win 9-8. So to recap, Florida had scored 4 runs in the bottom of the 8th inning and created just this razor-thin margin for the Gamecocks going in to the final inning. Pitzer comes in, gets strikeout to start, walks the second batter, and gives up a single. So suddenly you've got 2 runners on, 1 in scoring position, the tying run on second base with just 1 out against a surging Florida offense. He proceeds to get a strikeout and then forces a ground out for the game's final out to preserve the 9-8 win. And Tyler Pitzer is somebody that we've talked about a lot this season. Dude's a true freshman. And the context of this matters a lot because he comes in as a true freshman, pitching out of the bullpen, and looked very strong in his first couple of outings through non-conference play. Again, in the limited amount of innings that we saw him coming out of the bullpen, and rightfully earned his spot in the starting lineup for the weekend rotation, starting with the Vanderbilt game. Goes out there, tosses a gem in his first start at the college level against Vanderbilt. And we're all ranting and raving about this guy. Oh, my goodness, what can't this guy do? Then he goes out there against Alabama, gives up 3 home runs, gets knocked around a little bit, and then just has a rough outing against Texas A&M the other weekend in his most recent start. And look, pitchers are head cases, right? Pitching, there's so much of a mental aspect of pitching that when you have bad outings, especially as a true freshman, you always wonder what the response is going to be. And for his next outing to be able to go out there and pitch in a clutch situation on the road in a hostile environment like Gainesville, Florida is, and to come up that way, hats off to Tyler Pitzer. He certainly did the heavy lifting for this Gamecock team on Saturday afternoon to help them preserve that win and pick up the series victory, which, again, is huge on so many fronts. And, again, it sounds like he's going to get the start based on what Jack Veltri told us in the last segment there, and hopefully can have a really good outing coming up tonight for the Gamecocks as they take on the Citadel out there in Charleston. Again, first pitch coming up at 7 o'clock. Pre-game coverage will start at 6:45 right here on the game as the Gamecocks look to ride the momentum coming off this weekend into another win tonight and take that into a very important weekend series, taking on the Arkansas Razorbacks coming up this weekend. Also this weekend, of course, is the spring game for South Carolina football as we will finally put a wrap on spring practice. Are we going to learn a whole lot this weekend? Probably not. It'll just be good to see these guys in live action as compared to just kind of having to read the small little tidbits of what our guys from Gamecock Central and other media outlets have been able to see through the practice availabilities that they've been able to get as we'll get to see a full game, or at least close to a full game's display of this team coming up this weekend. Certainly looking forward to that. As I did yesterday, a lot of other SEC teams have been in action with their respective spring games, this weekend and the past couple of weekends, and we'll have some more coming up this weekend as well. But I want to hit on a few more of these as we wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. We'll start off with this. Let's go out to cut number 8 here, Dave, as Kentucky had its spring game this past weekend. Here's Mark Stoops talking about the focus for the Wildcats in their spring game.
It was better than last Saturday, and that's why I challenged the guys. I think, last Saturday they knew, normal, when I told you in 12 years, the normal we're going to the ground, a complete physical scrimmage last Saturday. The fact that we weren't doing that, I don't know if that played into it, but we just went out a little lackluster. It gets like that. It gets stagnant during spring. Like I said, they're up early every morning. We're grinding them every day, and they're competing against themselves and with no game, to look forward to. So it gets old from time to time, but I thought today they were much more focused. Again, not perfect, a lot of things to clean up on, but I thought the DBs challenged some things. We tried to get the ball down the field a little bit, but defense kept some things in front of us.
And, I would say as a whole, not a lot of people are paying attention to what's going on with Kentucky from the grand scheme of things in the SEC, but for South Carolina, I don't think there's a more important team to focus on this offseason than the University of Kentucky, because that is your true test to start the season. Yeah, you play Old Dominion week number 1. Again, no disrespect to the Monarchs. I think South Carolina should be able to handle that game, not with ease, but pretty routinely. And then the real test comes in week number 2 when you are going on the road to Lexington, Kentucky, and taking on Mark Stoops' crew. And that is going to really tell us where the South Carolina team is and who the real stars of this team are going to be for the Gamecocks. And Kentucky, like South Carolina, has a lot of questions this offseason. They're breaking in a brand new quarterback too. Brock Vandegrift coming over from Georgia, a guy that was a highly touted guy coming out of high school. Prince Avenue Christian right there in the shadow of the University of Georgia. He sat behind Carson Beck these past couple of years, and Stetson Bennett. He's finally getting his opportunity. How good can he be? He's somebody that I believe is going to be able to push the ball down the field. He's got a big arm. I've seen it up close and personal myself. That was an issue that Kentucky had a year ago with Devin Leary, is he couldn't push the ball down the field. He completed 30% of his passes greater than 20 yards. This is an offense that's going to be looking to open things up a whole lot more. They bring in Chip Trainum, the running back from Ohio State, to replace Ray Davis after he moved on and after having a very solid season for Kentucky a year ago. They bring back Dane Key, their leading wide receiver from a year ago. A lot of good pieces on this offense. How are they going to work well together is going to be interesting to see. Team that defensively needs some improvements, dealing with a lot of injuries this offseason. Coach Stoops didn't mention that cut there, but dealing with a lot of injuries. They had a lot of limited guys on defense, particularly on the defensive line, in their spring game over the weekend. So we'll see how they recover from those injuries and what they look like when the season rolls around. And again, I don't think there's any more important opponent for the Gamecocks than that week number 2 matchup going on the road to Lexington to really start the challenging slate of SEC play. And if you can come away with the win there, then hopefully that sets tone for what is going to be a good season, at the very least getting back to a bowl game for the Gamecocks in 2024. We'll continue to look around the SEC, hear from some other coaches after their spring games, including Billy Napier, as a lot of eyes going to be focused on the University of Florida for this upcoming season. And if Billy Napier can survive, you're number 3. That's coming up as we wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on The Game. Welcome back in at the Extra Point. Tyler Head with you on this Tuesday morning here on the game. Coming up at the top of the hour, it'll be the Garnet Trust Hour. Myself and Chris Clark going to be joined by Jacoby Wright from Gamecock Basketball sitting here. We'll recap this past season, also get a little insight into what's going on with his life, and maybe learn some things about Jacoby Wright we did not know prior to today. So certainly looking forward to that. Before we jump back into the spring football conversation, our guy Josh has informed me that we have some tickets to give away. Huge series this upcoming weekend for Gamecock baseball. I have a pair of tickets for Saturday's game against Arkansas. Caller number 4 right now, 803-404-6100. Win yourself a pair of tickets. See the Gamecocks take on the Razorbacks out at Founders Park this Saturday. First pitch set for 3 o'clock. Again, out there at Founders Park. Caller number 4 right now, 803-404-6100. Before we let Dave answer those phones, let's hit cut number 7 here, Dave. Billy Napier down there in Florida assessing the Gators spring game this past weekend.
What a day for football, man. I mean, about as good as it gets. And I'm going to tell you, I think for the most part it's pretty clean. I think there's a lot of balance in the game and a ton of situational work, in particular right there at the end. So, you know what, I'm proud of our team. I told them that on the field. You think about, we're at the halfway point through the offseason. I think we've made a ton of progress. This group in particular, I think the leadership, the accountability, the self-discipline, and we've got a team. We got a group that gets along with each other and has worked hard. And we got out here injury-free today for the most part. And we'll be able to take a break and kind of restart here in the middle of May.
So many eyes on Gainesville this upcoming year, and Florida in general. Regardless of how good or bad they are, they're always going to get a lot of attention because that is a program that's had the heights of success in college football. The last time was, 15 some odd years ago. But regardless, they're always a name that's going to garner a lot of attention. And when Billy Napier was hired as the head coach there to, take over after Dan Mullen kind of steered the ship in the wrong direction, people were very curious. Okay, what can Sunbelt Billy do down there in Gainesville? First 2 years, not been great. Under 500 both years. You missed a bowl game a season ago. A lot of need for big steps forward in year number 3 for Billy Napier, in a lot of people's minds, to potentially save his job. And we've talked ad nauseum about how daunting of a schedule Florida's going to deal with. They have that impossible November where they may not win any games over the course of that month in their pursuit of just trying to get back to a bowl game. It's a make-or-break year for him because that's a very impatient fan base, as we all well know. That the standards for what you expect down there at Florida are extremely, extremely high. And if you're not able to get there after 3 years, or if you're not able to get your team over 500 in 3 years, they're going to be ready to run you out of town. Now, whether that's justified or not, that's a different conversation. But Billy Napier's facing a lot of pressure, and a lot of people are already putting him on the hot seat before we've even gotten into this season. This was a Florida team that a season ago had a lot of issues when it came to defense. I mean, South Carolina, ran up and down the field on them a season ago. Unfortunately, came up short in the fourth quarter of that game against them here at Williams-Brice Stadium. That still feels like the one game that, dang it, just got away from you, because if South Carolina can get a stop on fourth down the fourth quarter of that game against the Gators offense, then we're talking about Carolina going bowling and an even more disastrous season for the Florida Gators. Unfortunately, it slipped through their fingers. Again, a lot of defensive issues for the Gators last season. They made a ton of changes on the defensive coaching staff, defensive line, cornerbacks, or the defensive backs coach. So they really kind of cleaned house there. Brought in a lot of talent from the transfer portal as well. They lost Princely U, who's gone to join so many other high-level players out there at Ole Miss and, relish in all that NIL money. But they've done a good job in restructuring their defense and bringing in guys from various places. They got Jameer Grimsley, who was a freshman commit, or was a freshman signee at Alabama that basically left once Nick Saban left. They bring in an experienced guy, Asa Turner, who was out there with Kalen DeBoer at the University of Washington. Come in. Both those guys going to be playing in the secondary here, as well as bring in a pretty decent recruiting class as well, which Florida always does, but it's about maximizing potential more than anything else. So a lot of eyes on Billy Napier this fall and seeing if he can turn things around. Obviously, that's a team that South Carolina is not going to have to deal with this year, as with the shifting of the SEC schedule, bringing in Texas and Oklahoma. The usual suspects of Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida not going to be on the docket for the Gamecocks this year. But as always, we'll keep an eye on what's going on down at Florida and seeing if Sunbelt Billy can survive in year number 3. Again, coming up next is the Gamecock the Garnet Trust Hour, as myself and Chris Clark will be joined by Jacoby Wright from Gamecock Basketball, get his thoughts on what this year was a magical year for Lamont Paris's crew on the hardwood. Quick reminder, the craft beer card is back. You spend $30 at a brewery at 12 different craft beer locations, $360 value, all yours for only $79. Head online to 1075thegame.com. Click on the Sweet Deals tab for your chance to purchase the craft beer card. That'll do it for today's edition of The Extra Point. Guard Trust Hour coming up next, right here on The Game.